My name's Layla and this is Charlie. We are both LLB law graduates. We graduated this July, and part of our final year module was the animal welfare and the law module. So by Simon Rubin.
Yeah, so before we begin, I'd like to give you a brief overview of what we'll be discussing today. He came. So we're going to be talking a little bit about how the module was taught and structured at John Moores University, and we're also going to be talking a little bit about our past attitudes, our current attitudes, and how they've shifted as a result. We're also going to touch a little bit on some scientific evidence and theory to try and illustrate why the teaching of animal law is vital throughout all stages of education. So, changing people's attitudes and opinions are usually the driving force behind improvements in animal-related legislation and public policy. So this really emphasises the importance in proper animal welfare and environmental education. Individual attitudes are really the only way that brings about change in areas such as animal welfare, when those who benefit from such a change can't bring about that change themselves. The ways in which animals are represented in literature and media has, to some extent, provided a framework for how humanity should treat animals. And although those representations have shifted over time to become more compassionate, those past attitudes really did influence, justify, and almost promote the maltreatment of animals on a scale of billions per year. So science has played a major part, mostly positive, in influencing Western attitudes towards animals. One of the main ways in which this has happened is the illustration of animal sentience, which is their ability to feel pleasure and suffer pain. So studying animal law and learning both about current and past attitudes was really effective in that it allowed us to see how attitudes have shifted over time and also the reasons for it.
So, in order to understand the impact of the module, it's important to know how and what our attitudes were before the module, coming into the module. So myself, I had probably no awareness of the things that we actually studied. For example, the badger, we focused one of our assignments on one of those, and I just remember coming in and not having any clue what I'm writing about at the start. So we also studied a bit of animal experimentation. I focused my second assignment on that. Up until that point, I had, again, no idea the actual extent to which animals were used for experiments. The fact that they were breeded purely for the sake of the experiments kind of shocked me when I came to the module. So that's why I kind of focused my second assessment on it, in order to understand the real impact.
Yeah, so I had a lack of appreciation for the way that animals were really treated. One video we watched, which is really imprinted in my mind, is a video with what happens to a lot of male baby chicks when they're born. They are shoveled up, thrown into a grinder, and then what comes out is then fed to the female baby chicks. So obviously in the mass production farms, they don't need those male baby chicks. Another thing I realised was the actual scale of it. So I was unaware that animals in agricultural farming, the land that is used for them accounts for 30% of the entire land's world surface. Before studying the module, I also thought that the government was doing more to protect animals, and I thought there was more protection for them. I thought it applied to all of them. One of the things that I learned when I was looking through legislation for pieces of coursework is that a lot of the legislation only applies to domesticated animals. Animals in agriculture make up 98% of all animals raised in the UK. So by not having that legislation apply to those, all this animal welfare positivity, which is initially suggested, doesn't extend as far as you would actually think.
So the
Go off, yeah.
So the module in itself was comprised of two components: a 2,000 word short communication and a 3,000 word legal essay. Coming into the module, with seeing short communication panicked us, so to say. We had no idea what it was, we didn't know how to write it, and we were initially obviously very panicked. The second assessment was a 3,500 word legal essay, as discussed earlier, and we were kind of back into our safe zone. So going back to the first assignment, we had the option of doing it either on Brexit or the cull. Me and Charlie both focused our essay on the cull, and we kind of both used the same approach in the sense that we were comparing the effects of the cull, and I went to say that to compare it to the countries in the UK and whether England can learn from Wales and Ireland in what they're actually doing. So in my title, I called it obviously Combating the Cull, Can England Borrow from the Rest of the UK? So yeah, initially we were quite worried, we didn't know what a short communication was. It actually benefited us greatly in the long run, in the sense that it gave us a lot of individuality, and it was our first time we actually wrote our own title to our essay. So I like to call it a mini dissertation. So if you don't know, it's like a report style essay, and yeah, we had a lot more control over it than we did in our other modules.
Yeah, so my title for the 3,500 word essay was, is Brexit likely to result in the realignment of animal welfare standards with modern philosophical values? And then some of you are probably thinking, why the hell would you want to write something like that? But that really emphasises for me the importance in being able to write your own essay, write under your own title. Because if you can't, you don't get to bring your own individuality. A lot of people wouldn't like to write that title, but I love writing about it. Brexit's a current issue, it's relevant, and for me that was something I wanted to touch upon. And I feel like that's not a lot of flexibility you get in a lot of other modules. So being able to have your own flexibility in animal welfare when you have your own moral compass and everybody's different, everybody has different attitudes, it was really effective. This sort of flexibility extended through to our lectures. We didn't have your sort of stereotypical 2-hour lecture period and then a 1-hour seminar. We did have less time actually in the classroom, but it got time for more one-on-one support and also more individual learning. And when we were in those classrooms, we would be given a topic at the beginning of each week, we'd be shown some material, and then we get to debate it, we get to discuss it. And when we were in a classroom with so many people with different views and opinions, we had meat eaters, we had vegetarians, we had vegans, people of different religions who don't eat certain meats and for certain reasons. It was really important to be able to see all of that and discuss it and debate it and develop those abilities and just get a wider appreciation for where other people's attitudes come from.
So the module in itself had common themes. So as you discussed, there was a lot of discussion and debates. You don't really get the opportunity to do that in most of the other modules and your LLB. Again, the realism as well, that's kind of what shaped the module, that's what really changed our attitudes. I think the realism aspect really changed our current attitudes and really kind of was an eye-opener in the module. Yeah. That's all.
That's.
No, go back. Yeah.
Yeah. That's. So, can we change someone's attitudes towards the humane treatment of animals with the animal welfare in the law module? Well, yes, we can.
So, as discussed, in the module we had a greater understanding of animal law and the regulations that were in place to protect animals. There was definitely more consideration for what we kind of do in everyday life after studying the module. In a focus group Simon organised, we discussed our thoughts and feelings from the module with Simon, and a lot of the common themes were some of our peers actually changed their diet. Now, some of it was only temporary, but it just does go to say that a module can change your opinion and your attitude towards, animals. As well, there was more awareness of the issues as discussed, and for example, animal experimentation, the agriculture, slaughtering, fox hunting, and the badger cull.
It is, yeah. Right, so one of the things we also learned was the wider implications of animal law. It's not something you necessarily see or would think of when you know that you're going to learn about animal welfare. But 20 to 30% of the environmental impact of European households actually comes from their diet. That's not something that you would necessarily see or hear about in general media, but being able to research that and realise the impact it actually has, it was really important. And most people are actually unaware of that environmental impact. And even those who are aware substantially underestimate it, like I did prior to studying the module. So yeah, there is clear evidence that animal education creates a wider appreciation of the type and scale of the treatment of animals. And this does influence more animal conscious and environmentally conscious decisions such as veganism, vegetarianism. A study done in 2006 estimated that there was 150,000 vegans in the UK. Another one done in 2016 by the Vegan Society estimates that figure is now at 600,000. Now there has been another one more recently done by Compare the Market in 2018 that estimates there's 3.5 million vegans now in the UK. So obviously the difference in figures mean you can't exactly pinpoint what the exact figure is, but the mass increase does illustrate that through greater awareness and animal education, people are making more environmentally conscious decisions. Also, the fact that a vast proportion of this figure is of the younger demographic can potentially suggest that social media is having an influence as well. I know scrolling through Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, you do see a lot of gruesome videos and see things that PETA have done or certain things like that. And although it's not your stereotypical form of education, that awareness is still a form of education. They're becoming more aware of the issues, they're becoming more inclined to do things which will actually affect animal welfare. Now, I'm not saying that we need to condemn meat eating outright. The global livestock sector now makes up for, I think, 1.3 billion livelihoods around the world. So we can't outright condemn it and take all those people without jobs. But by educating people about more environmentally conscious decisions, we can try and get them to be more animal friendly in the techniques that they use.
So, yeah, that's us. Got any questions?